If your organization is just getting started on Docusign, you've got quite a few things you need to set up before you should send your first envelopes. Otherwise, your signature requests are not going to work as expected, and you won't be able to collaborate safely and efficiently with your team members. We're going to head to the admin tab on your Docusign account, and you need to be an admin in order for you to access those settings. And we're going to start by setting up the regional settings. The first thing that we want to do is to make sure that the time zone that we're in matches the time zone in here. So I'm going to set the default time zone of the account, and then you will be able to allow users to set their own time zone and date format inside of their My Preferences tab, but we'll cover that later. So once you've set up your time zone and the way that you want your time and date format to look, you also want to set up how the date field signed will appear on your documents. Do you want to use the date field signed format of your recipients or the date field signed format of the account? Same thing for the time zone. When the document was signed, just use your account default, and then you're going to head to save. Once you've done your regional settings, then we're going to go to security settings. And here we can specify how many minutes the Docusign website will remain active before it gets logged out. I would advise to reduce this to 10 minutes. In terms of authentication settings, then this is very advanced, so I don't think you need to worry about this unless you have a very strong security setting that you want to enforce. One thing that I recommend though is that you enforce a password security rule. The first thing is about the strength. I recommend that you go ahead with a strong password, and that you also enable password expiration after, let's just say, 90 days. And this is to avoid the admin 123 exclamation mark. I see you all. I know you. You do that. My team even does that. I have to tell them to stop doing that because there's a lot at stake in your Docusign account. So you definitely don't want anyone to hack into your Docusign account. Then you can take a look at the account profile. So you can give a name to your account in case you have multiple accounts. That might be helpful. Otherwise, just use the name of your company. And you can also add a person's name and email and phone number in case of someone within your organization has issues with Docusign. They know who is the Docusign admin that they can go ahead and contact. Next up, we're going to talk about brands. So if you work for a large organization, it might be useful to have multiple brands. For example, if you have different subsidiaries or you're managing different lines of products that fall within different brands and you want to keep messaging consistent. And so to add a brand, just click on add a brand, give a name to this brand. So let's just say that's ABC Capital. And you can also edit your color theme. So once you upload your signing logo, you can change the color of the button. You can change the color of the button text. You can also specify destination URLs. You can send them to a different URL that says, thank you for signing. Here are the next steps. That's always nice. And you can do that for all those possible scenarios just right here. And before I continue, if we haven't met before, my name is Sofiane Saoudi. I used to be a Docusign implementation consultant back in 2019 in Sydney, Australia. And since 2020, I founded Solution Consulting, an agency that helps organizations drowning in paperwork streamline document workflows, I guess. And if you deal with lots of paperwork, you and your team can save a tremendous amount of time by automating the boring and manual repetitive things like creating a document by having to copy and paste it inside of your Docusign template, checking the status of whether people have signed or not by relying on your Docusign emails as opposed to having that status synchronized back inside of your ERP or CRM, as well as automating how your documents are stored once they've been signed by all your signers. And it's very easy for you to find your documents because they're placed in the right folder and they're named the way that you want. And also, if you're collecting information from your signer, that information can automatically update your records back in your CRM or your ERP or whatever other spreadsheet you might be using. And you can do all of this using automation as long as you learn how Docusign works, map out your entire workflow, build your Docusign template, and then set up your integrations. And that's something that you can absolutely do on your own. We're not doing anything that people can't do. It's just that we've been doing it for 5 years. So if you don't want to struggle on your own and you want a team of experts to help you set this up, you can schedule a free consultation using the link just down below. During the call, we'll analyze your process and suggest the best implementation setup and roadmap for your unique needs. But if you're more of a DIY person and you just want to watch these tutorials and keep doing it by yourself with trial and error, that's absolutely fine. But in that case, I recommend that you download our free Docusign Mastery cheat sheet. It's the other link below. It will help you get started on Docusign on the right foot. But for now, let's go back to our account setup. What we want to do is create our permission profiles. A permission profile is what controls who can do what inside of your Docusign account. And so by default, we have 3 permission profiles. So the admin can do whatever they want in the account. The sender can send an envelope using a template or without using a template, but they cannot create a template. And then we have a DS viewer. They can go inside of the account and see their envelopes or the ones that have been shared with them, but they cannot send new envelopes. And so in my opinion, there is one permission profile that should exist by default, but it doesn't. And I recommend that you set it up right now because you don't want to have to rely on a Docusign admin to set up all the templates. I mean, you call it whatever you want. I'm just going to name these permission profiles. So template creator plus sender, no, not admin. I'm not going to check the box all admin capabilities. Otherwise, that would grant that permission profile all the actions that an admin could do. But I do want to allow my user to send envelopes. And for my templates, by selecting share, it means that they can create, use, and share. So I'm going to click on share. And then I might want to allow this person to do a bulk send. I might allow this person to send SMS instead of just send envelopes by email. I might want to allow that person to have access to Docusign Maestro and to use them or create them. If you don't know what Maestro is, I've created a video on Docusign Maestro. I really recommend that you watch it. It's great to automate large processes. Anyway, the next step will be to create your groups. Groups are used to organize users based on their function, departments, or access requirements. By assigning users to groups, you don't need to keep track of which template needs to be accessible to a specific individual. Instead, you share your templates with a specific group, and if a person joins the company, you just then assign them to that group, and if they leave the company, you remove them from that group. And one person can be part of multiple groups, and one person within a group can have a different permission profile as well. So you can get very granular with what you're doing. So create your permission profile first, then your groups, and then you're going to create your users. So I'm going to create a new group, accounts payable, for example, and then within my accounts payable, I will then be able to assign my users. But to assign my users, then I first need to add my users. And so that's our last step. And so then I'm able to add my user. So let's just say test@solusign.com. You can click on next, and here you can select which is the permission profile that you want to assign to that user and which groups you want to add that user to. And so I'm going to assign that group to the accounts payable team and with that permission profile. And so that's it. That's how you set up your users inside of Docusign. Now, if you have a lot of users that you want to import, please click on bulk add. That's going to give you a template. Add all your users in here, fill out all the details. And then once you've done, drag the CSV template back here. And then there you go. That saves a ton of time, trust me. Once you've added your users, the next thing that you want to do is to configure shared access. Shared access allows users to act on other users' envelopes or even send on behalf. So for example, here I have a user called Alex, and I want to be able to access his envelopes. So I'm going to go to Actions and Manage Shared Access, and then click on Share Access with Others. And actually it's already done. And then I have 3 options. If I choose Allow to Manage, I can just view Alex's envelopes, but I can't really do anything on them. I can just view what's happening, what's his, not the draft, but the envelope that he sent. If I allow myself to edit the envelopes, Alex's envelope, then I can resend the envelope, correct them, void them, so I can act on them, but I still can't send brand new envelopes for him. If I click on Allow to Send on behalf of Alex, then in that case, I can send Alex's envelopes, I can see Alex's draft envelopes, and I can see all the things above as well. So that's the highest level of permission. I'll click next and set a duration. That's optional. You can have shared access forever, or you can just choose a start and end date. And then here I can select who is going to have access to Alex's envelopes. And so I can't specify a group here, unfortunately, but I can select as many users as I want. And then all these users will have access to Alex's envelopes. I'm going to click on save, and that's it. Now, if I want Alex to have access to my envelope, I would have to click on shared with Alex and then add myself here. So again, share access with user. I'm going to give him this level of permission, and then I'm going to click on save and not shave. And now we will be able to access each other's envelopes. And to do that, you will simply go to the agreements tab, then shared access, Alex. And now, as you can see, it says that you're managing envelopes on behalf of Alex. And if I start that new envelope, then that will create an envelope as if Alex was sending it. Now let's go back to our admin settings. We got a couple more things that we want to cover. Signing settings is going to be next. So the first thing is the auto navigation. When there's multiple fields on the document that you want to get filled out by your signers, you can even ask Docusign to go page to page, navigate from one page to the next, whether there are fields or not, or navigate from each required field, which means that if on page 1 you've got a required field, on page 2 you don't have a required field, but on page 3 you do, then once completing the first field on page 1, it will go straight to page 3 and skip that page 2. What I personally like to do is to page then navigate a required field. That's the standard one that I like to use because it will go to each page. Allow recipients to view mobile-friendly documents with responsive signing. You definitely want to check that because Docusign can resize your documents to make them more easy to read on mobile devices, depending on the layout of the document. However, I would not enable mobile-friendly as the default view, so I would leave that off and make sure that the person who's building the template knows what they're doing and only turn it on when they need to do. In terms of the recipients, the checkboxes here, honestly, this is really personal. There are so many different things that we could talk about here. Now, in terms of signature, you can decide whether you want the Docusign frame. It's just personal preference. But what you can do is to configure what signing methods are available to your recipients. And I've created a video on how to set up different signing methods. So I'm not going to go into too much detail in this specific video, but your recipients have 3 options to sign. They can either draw, upload, so draw using their mouse, which is terrible, or using their fingers if they're using their mobile devices. They can upload a picture of their signature, or they can just choose a predefined handwritten style, which is one of those things. And this is enabled by default. Let's try to go back to signing settings. Envelope delivery. So attach documents to completion email. This is completely up to you. I personally don't like to have confidential information such as social security numbers or financial information being sent via email. And so as soon as your recipients will sign your documents, Docusign will send that completion document back to them and to you. And so if someone were to hack your emails, those people could have access to important information. And so that's why I don't recommend this option. However, most of your recipients will ask you, can I get a copy of the document? And they can still do, but they will need to click on the link as opposed to having the PDF attached in the email. Again, personal preference, you do whatever you want. Attach certificate of completion to the envelope. Again, by default, I think it's turned on. You can turn it off. You can always download the certificate of completion from the agreements tab later on. So it's completely up to you. Suppress emails to embedded signers. This is only applicable if you are using Docusign embedded in your own application. So if that's not the case, don't worry about that. Send completion emails to embedded signers. I definitely recommend that you leave that on because if you're using a Power Form or a web form, most likely you want your recipients to receive a copy of the document. Click on save here as well. And the next setting is going to be sending settings. Here you can configure the default font. When you drag and drop your Docusign fields, why not just setting this up once and then you're done? The font size as well, so you don't have to do it each time. And then you want to enable pretty much all of this. The document visibility, if you do have access to this, you want to watch my video on document visibility. I'm not going to get into it here because we'll be here for 20 minutes. trying to explain to you what each of those options means. Include envelope ID by default. I would strongly recommend that you do that, because if you want a document to stand up in court, it's easier if the document has the unique reference on all the pages, automatically replicate information in fields with the same data label. So in Docusign, if you create two text fields that have the same data label, such as company name, if somebody enters the company name in field 1, then that company name will be pre-filled automatically in the second field. And here you can decide whether you want this thing to happen on all the documents that you have in your envelopes or just at the individual document level. I have rarely seen cases where this was useful, so I would recommend you go with on all documents in an envelope and then change that if that causes any issues. Allow sender to download form data if you want your senders to be able to use the data in an Excel format or via API to update other systems, as opposed to having to copy paste from the final document into wherever the data needs to go. Enable custom email and language for each recipient. Why not? That allows you to have a different email template for each recipient that you have in your envelope. Allow edits to shared access, permission, and setup. It means that individual users will be able to choose who they're sharing access with without requiring an admin to go in here and do the steps that we did just before. So you definitely want to do that, because you don't want to have to bother an admin each time somebody joins the company and to share their access with someone else. Enable agreement template builder if you have access to document generation add-on to create mail merge documents and you cannot use the Microsoft Word add-in to create your Docusign mail merge template. This might be a good option. So you can just click on enable, and if you don't like it, you can just not use it. For document sources, if you check these, your senders will be able to upload documents inside of the envelopes or the templates from those sources after they're authorized their connection with those providers also. The next one is email preferences. So here you can set the default email preferences, but again, individual users will be able to set their prep email notification at their user level. So by default, everything is selected. You might not want to get an email notification each time one of those events happens. It's completely up to you. Custody transfer. Let's just say that you're on EA and you want to create documents on behalf of the CEO and you want the envelope to look as though they're coming from the CEO, not from you. And so what you can do is you can create a rule that says that each time an envelope is sent from Alex, then we need to transfer the ownership of this envelope so that it looks like it's Faye who's sending the documents. Document retention has to do with how long you want to retain documents before they are purged, but by default, Docusign retains all the documents. Reminders and expiration. So by default, Docusign will send reminders to people until they've signed your envelopes. You can either turn on those reminders by default and decide how many days before the first reminder, how many days in between each reminder, the expiration of your envelopes, and you can also allow the senders of those envelopes to override the default settings that you've just set just down below here. In terms of comments, you can turn it on, it doesn't hurt. Document custom fields. So those are fields that you don't need to set up when you're starting. I guess you can create those fields as you're creating the templates. Envelope custom fields or fields that you can set up at the time of sending the envelopes in order to classify and track envelopes. So for example, we can have a field name that's called region, and we can require this for all the envelopes, and we can have this as a list, and then we can say New York and then California, etc., etc. And then as soon as an envelope will need to be sent using a template or without using a template, the sender will have to choose whether this envelope relates to the Californian or New York. The last thing that you might want to do is the rules. And so rules allow you to create automations that are going to help you store Docusign completed envelopes or just create some basic workflows. So for example, here we can save sales contract inside of Google Drive automatically. And so the way that we configure the rule is we say, when this happens, we want this to happen. So here, if the template called that is signed, then I want to store the document inside of a Google Drive and I want to place it in this specific folder. But before you can do that, you first want to set up your connections. And so you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app. And then you want to click on connect a new app and then choose which provider you want to add inside of your connection. Now, the next thing that you want to do is to go to the manage profile, because when you click here, you can set up settings at the profile level. So for example, if I live in a different time zone than where the account default time zone is configured with, I can change that so that when I look for a certain envelope in my Docusign account, I'm not confused because I'm looking at a different time zone timestamp for a specific transaction, when in fact, I would like the time to be translated into my time zone. So the first thing that we want to do is to go to the language and region, and then we want to change the time zone that's here. So again, I do not live here. I don't know what's going on. I'm just gonna go with this time zone here, Lisbon. By the way, for those who are wondering, half of our team is in the US and half of the team is in Europe. I am myself based in Lisbon. Region, I'm still not in the United States, so I don't know why this keeps showing up. And I want to match my computer's time zone because I do travel quite often, and I think that is it. So I'm going to click on save. In terms of signatures, again, I've done a video on how to set up your own signatures. So in security settings, you will have your primary email. You can change your password here if you ever need to, and then you can also have recovery codes that you can print. Every time you're going to use a different device to log into Docusign, you'll have a new device verification. You can turn that on or off if you want. And you can also have a two-step verification. So each time you enter your password, your account will ask for a biometric or a 2FA, an email code sent to your email or number. You can add a phone number actually here, which will help you retrieve your forgotten password in case you lose access to your email as well. You can have alternate emails to receive the verification code in case you lose access to your main email and your phone and you partied too hard and you lost access to everything. You can configure a passkey. I'm not going to get into what this is right now. You can configure a physical security key as well. And you can also use an authenticator app each time you want to log into Docusign, like you would do typically with Salesforce. And that's pretty much it for your My Profile section. The next thing that we want to do is to go to My Preferences. And I really don't know why Docusign doesn't merge My Profile and My Preferences, but I guess I'm not Docusign. So you want to head to My Preferences here. Here is where you can decide who has access to your envelopes and who is giving you access to their envelopes. You can also change the email notifications, which is quite handy. That's it for your Docusign onboarding. So if you've just started with Docusign, follow those best practices. And then the next step really is to learn how to create your Docusign template, your integrations. And if you need help with any of this, even choosing the right Docusign plan, feel free to reach out. You can use the link just down below to speak to one of our team members. I will see you in the next video. And until then, happy signing.